And my friends, our God is with you. Thank you. We're reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus appointed 72 other disciples and set them on ahead in pairs in advance to every town and place that he intended to visit. He said to them, "The harvest is rich, but the workers are few. Therefore ask of the overseer to send out workers to the harvest. Now be on your way, and remember, I am sending you as lambs in the midst of wolves. Do not carry a walking stick or a knapsack, wear no sandals, and greet no one along the way. Whatever house you enter, first say, 'Peace be upon this house.' If the people live there peaceably, there your peace will rest on them, and if not, it will come back to you. Stay in that home eating and drinking what they have for you, for the laborer is worth their wage. Do not keep moving from house to house. And whatever city you enter, after they welcome you, eat what they set before you, and heal those who are sick in the town, and say to them, 'The reign of God has drawn near to you.' If the people of any town you enter do not welcome you, go into the streets and say, 'We shake the dust of this town from our feet as testimony against you. But know that the reign of God has drawn near. I tell you, on that day the fate of Sodom will be less severe than that of such a town." The 72 disciples returned with joy, saying, "Rabbi, even the demons obey us in your name." Jesus replied, "I have watched Satan fall from the sky like lightning. Look, I have given you power to tread on snakes and scorpions, even all the forces of the enemy, and nothing will ever injure you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in the fact that the spirits obey you, so much as at your names having been inscribed in heaven." My friends, the gospel of the Lord. Being here tonight, during this, although I really do have to say, in one way, we're a little bit spoiled. I remember growing up in rural Nebraska, and the church that we belonged to was about half this size, and there was never heat or never air conditioning and very little heat. So this really is not too bad. You really can't be too spoiled. So my friends, I heard this past week, I heard that a major news agency, an agency like CNN, have been doing some investigative reporting regarding that tragic fire of our beloved Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. The reporter actually had spent the night in the cathedral, and in that, spending his night, he found an opportunity to interview face-to-face the infamous Quasimodo. And he asked him if he had any inside knowledge of that tragic fire. Quasimodo replied that he didn't know if the fire was caused by a cigarette butt from one of the construction workers, or if it was a result of some faulty wiring. But he said to the reporter, "I do have a hunch." I just had to say this. I think it was so good. Okay, my friends. Like Quasimodo, I have a hunch. I have a hunch that many of us, after listening to the readings today, if we're really honest with each other, if we were really gut level, very honest with each other, could probably say to one another, "Okay, so what?" Right? If we didn't spend our time together tonight, if we simply, just imagine, if we simply stepped into the next part of the liturgy and we were left with what we heard, I bet, and walked out those doors, by what we heard, I bet would make probably say, so what? If we were brutally honest with each other, we might be able to say, we might be able to summarize maybe even what we heard. Maybe you and I could say, well, Isaiah was encouraging somebody to rejoice about something. He's suckling at the mother's breast, something was going on there. And Paul said something about the cross, which I never understand in the first place, right? Let's just be honest. And this whole thing about Jesus and sending out 72 or 70 disciples, and you and I go out every day of the week, and I don't know about you, but I certainly don't see Satan crawling from the sky. And I haven't had many demons obeying me recently. Really. So if we're really honest, right? If that's a fair assessment, let's try this. I hope that maybe tonight we can change that perspective just a little. Let's just tweak it a little bit and turn it around and see if we can come up with something different, or maybe a new understanding that might help us make sense of some of this. The great scientific mind of the late Albert Einstein, he said this: the important thing for us is to never, ever stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. One cannot help but be in awe when they contemplate the mysteries of eternity, of life, of the marvelous structure of reality. He said, never lose a holy curiosity. Isn't that awesome? Einstein, never lose a holy curiosity. My hope is tonight that we might pique a little bit of that holy curiosity and maybe even experience a little bit of holy encouragement, right? So let's tear this up a little bit. This Isaiah that we heard tonight, we are really, really Catholic. I'm sorry to say that in one sense. In the fact that as Catholics, we never hear where the heck our readings come from. We know it came from the book of Isaiah, right? We say that. We never tell you where. Sorry about that. You have to look it up yourself. It's more than 120 characters. You got to look it up. I will tell you for tonight, though, this Isaiah is Isaiah 66. Isaiah 66 is the very last book of the book of Isaiah. Now, in order to really make sense out of this, you have to understand the book of Isaiah. So I'm going to give you a really brief whole semester class in 3 sentences. The book of Isaiah is really three different books. It's Proto-Isaiah, Deutero-Isaiah, and I lost it. Yeah, Proto-Isaiah, Deutero-Isaiah, and Trito-Isaiah. Now the microphone went out. Proto-Isaiah, Proto-Isaiah, that'll get your attention. Proto-Isaiah is chapters 1 through 39. Now you might say this isn't going to make any difference, but listen to about the time that this book was most likely composed. This book was most likely composed around 600 BCE, okay? Before the Common Era, so it's about 600, those first 39 chapters. The second part, Deutero-Isaiah, is 40 to 55. And those chapters were probably composed around 560 BCE. And Trito-Isaiah, which is 55 to 66, that was composed around 516. Now let's take a look at history. Because what happens in Proto-Isaiah, the Isaiah that is trying to encourage people to be faithful to their God, etc., that's the Isaiah of the early Babylonian exile. That's right when the people are first experiencing being exiled from their land. Isaiah is trying to lift them up, encourage them in their exile from each other. And now you go 70 years and you hear this part of the reading. 70 years later, this Isaiah, this prophet, is talking to a group of people who have returned to Jerusalem and have rebuilt the temple. So, you know what happens in 70 years. Most of us, some of us might live that long, but in that time we didn't actually live that long. It was probably about 35 years. So this would have been 2 generations later. And Isaiah is talking to a group of people who has never known the temple to have been rebuilt. So he's trying to say, listen, people, this is awesome. Jerusalem, this is awesome. You're home. You're home again. Well, can you imagine coming back to a country which you never knew in the first place because your parents were exiled? You were in a concentration camp for the last 70 years. You don't know what to rejoice. That's what Isaiah is trying to do, is lift them up and rejoice and encourage them in the midst of their own unbelief. Isaiah, facing that question of the generations, is really facing a people who only have known exile and hardship and despise. And the prophet's really trying to encourage them in that returning. And I wonder if maybe in some way the wisdom of the church might not be coming through for you and I. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel like we're living in a time that is characterized by a lot of division, and that division is not only internationally, but it's politically, and it's religiously, and it's civilly. It seems to be everywhere, doesn't it? It's a time of really discord for us as a people. And maybe we need to hear what Isaiah said, that God will indeed let peace spread over us like a river, and the wealth of the nations with an overflowing torrent. Now I'm going to remember, or ask you to remember, what did Einstein say? A little curiosity, right? Holy curiosity. If we have the wealth of the nations overflowing like a torrent, I wonder what our world would be like. So I did a little research. This might blow you away because it absolutely blew me away. I researched just enough to find out if we, in the United States, would utilize 1/3, get this, 1/3 of the land that is in between our interstate system roadways. You know that median that's in between? 1/3, if we used 1/3 of our land in between our interstate roadway system to raise rice, we could feed the world twice over. Twice over. Isn't that phenomenal? 1/3. So here's the bottom line, my friends. We can and we could make a huge difference for the world if we choose to. If we choose to. But that would not and is not easy. Maybe that's where Paul's idea of the whole cross comes into play. Because the decision of holding us in our lives is not an easy one. It is not easy to be a Christian in the world today. It is not easy to live the Christian life because it calls us to the edge of this voiceless in our world. And in being and in doing and in living the spiritual life, you and I will find opposition, and we will find dismissal, and we will find disregard, and we will find disgust. So did Jesus. So we must be in pretty good company. I'm going to challenge also an earlier summary of the gospel curriculum today. Although I wouldn't and don't believe that many of us would say that we see Satan, or that we don't see Satan falling from the sky, or that we've cured the sick or witnessed demons obeying us, I have to gently beg to differ. I have to really gently beg to differ. Because this is one of those perfect examples of how Scripture, when it gets interpreted, gets all screwed up. It's a perfect example because what is said in Greek is not really what we hear, right? So when we experience the word in Greek of sick, right? Heal the sick. In Greek, that word is asthenesis. Asthenesis. Do you hear what other doctor do we have that does that? Anesthesis, right? And what do anesthetists do? put you to sleep, right? Put you to sleep. They make you weak, right? They make you weak. The Greek understanding of sickness is not physical sickness, like I'm throwing up or I got something, sores on my body or something. That what Jesus said when he said, go out and heal the sick, he said, go out and strengthen those who are weak. Pick up the downtrodden. Help the orphan. Stand with the widow. Stand with the voiceless. He's not talking about physical healing of sickness. He's talking about those who are weak. So there are a couple of things that we do here as a community. And one of those is that in many ways we do help those who stand without voice and without strength. From laundry soap to flip-flops to winter coats and hats, from gloves to dresses for children who are on a continent away. You and I do that. We lift in prayer others. We support in many ways anyone who's trying to find strength and those who have no voice in our world today. To be a voice for the voiceless. We have put and continue to put countless hours of thought and prayer and discussion and dialogue into our strategic plan so that we can ensure that we live as a community into the values that drive us and help us to spread the good news. We really do our best to live the gospel out loud. And I have seen us living the commission that we share at the end of every one of our liturgies. You know that commission. When I say we know how much a tired and hurting world needs our strength and our joy and our gladness, but there are deeds of compassion and courage that will never be done unless we do them, and words of hope and healing that will never be spoken unless we speak them. I want to encourage us tonight. I want to encourage us tonight to continue precisely doing that, because every time one of those things happens, Satan does indeed fall from the sky. I have literally seen here and out there in the world, I have seen anger transformed with a simple smile. I have seen despair demolished by a hug. I have witnessed hope and experienced joy here as I have rarely witnessed and experienced joy anywhere in my past. I have seen us changing the world, and I hope we never, ever, ever stop. I hope that you and I never lose our holy curiosity or that we let it wane, and I hope that we never stop helping one another to be and to become our very best selves. There is a parallel saying to one of our book in Gospel tonight that I'd like to leave you with as you step forward. Because it comes from the lips of Jesus, and I believe it's directed to every one of us. When Jesus simply says this, Behold, I am sending you out as a sheep among wolves. So be therefore as wise as serpent and yet as gentle as doves. Can we continue to transform the world?